Our next speaker is Dr. Naresh Babu, who is the Chief of Retina and Vitreous Services from Arvind Eye Care Systems from Madurai. And he is going to be detailing us on algorithmic approach to a case of posterior segment trauma. So on to you, Doctor.
Thank you, Madam. First, I would like to thank, I think I am audible enough.
Yes.
I would like to thank Chitra Madam and thank Srinivas for this opportunity. And in fact, actually, before starting, I want to give a rejoinder, but that was made easy by Dr. Kumar, because when we started making the algorithm for open globe injury, at the end of making the algorithm, I was confused what I am going to convey, because this is a PG forum. So with your kind permission, I have made it into a sort of 10 commandments. Of course, I am not Moses to give the commandments, but just 10 commandments of approaching a case with open globe injury. Because as was told earlier, algorithm in open globe injury is not possible because every case is unique and every case has to be dealt differently. But still, as a general approach, we'll see how to approach a case of. The first commandment which we would like to is, before we start the ocular examination, whenever a patient comes, we'll have to ensure the systemic stability, because most of these people, because of head injury or other accidental injuries, or maybe because of the influence of alcohol, it's very difficult. So first, we'll have to ensure the systemic stability. Meticulous history taking is very important. Examination and documentation is important, because every other injury, unless otherwise proven, is a MLC case. Because initially they will say it's a non-MLC, but 10 days later they'll come and stand in front of us asking for wound certificate. And by the time, if we have not made it MLC, it becomes a problem for us. And evaluate periocular trauma, especially like ocular wall or lid, because in the classification and the grading of the trauma, we don't include these structures. Injection of TT is mandatory, and just put a shield and then you refer. And almost all the cases of trauma, if it is extensive, unless otherwise it's a small foreign body, a small tear, we are going to take them under GA, so keep them nil orally. And all the children will be taken. So most of our trauma cases we take under general anesthesia. So the second commandment will be the epidemiology, but first to see what is the age of the patient, gender, socioeconomic status, any history of alcohol abuse. And what was the object causing the injury? Because recently we had a patient, when we sent the patient for CT scan, it came as 6,700 Hounsfield unit. But few days later, when we repeated the scan, it became 177 Hounsfield unit, and it was a cracker injury. The foreign body inside was the paper which was used to make the crackers. Because this will give us the probable IOFP composition, because sometimes it may be a rare earth, or it may be a metallic non-magnetic, or it may be a glass. And where it has happened is also very important, whether it's at the workplace or the occupation, and when, and the site of the injury is also very important. The third important will be recognizing the open globe injury, because today we are going to confine how to approach a case with the open globe injury. Closed globe injury is not in our purview. So if there is a full thickness defect in sclera or cornea, it is very easy and obvious. But there are certain times where the tear may happen occultly. So how to suspect them whenever the AC becomes deep with a normally posteriorly retracted plateau iris, then it is the pathognomic sign of a posterior globe dehiscence. So just look for the AC depth. Normal AC depth with the retracted plateau iris is important. There will be a relative hypertony, extensive chemosis. There can be vitreous hemorrhage and small lid tears also, and the subconjunctival hemorrhage. So this is a case actually where the patient came with 6/6 vision, but if you see, there is a small subconjunctival hemorrhage. The tear was so occult, but when we saw the fundus, we could find a foreign body, and a small foreign body without any infection with minimal vitreous hemorrhage. So when not examined properly, this might be missed, and if the patient doesn't come to us later on, ends up in cirrhosis bulbi. Fourth one is classifying the injury. There are four ways, the things to be seen. That is the type of the injury, what is the grade of the vision, then the pupil, whether it's positive or negative for RPD, and the area where it is involved. So based on this, you made a classification of the wound, and based on that, we can say, like many a times, if you see, the grading is also not complete actually. One of the cases, the one which is in the arrow mark, the patient came with just a pin in the eye. But believe me, when we did a CT scan, he had almost 60 pins in the eye. And the reason for it was a self-inflicted injury. And the reason for putting the pin in his eye was he was not getting married actually. The fifth commandment is we have to prognosticate the patient, and for which we can use the ocular trauma scale. So there are six criteria based on which we'll come to a rough score. So based on the RAS score, if the score is less than 44 or 0 to 44, the chances of that patient getting more better than 6/12 vision is just 1%. But whereas if the RAS score is close to 92 to 100, then there is 92% chance of that patient getting 20 to 100. So this score has to be done in any case of injury so that we can prognosticate, because all of these patients will have a lot of apprehension, because losing a vision is not a joke actually. So they will have 1,000 question. So better to do all these things to prognosticate what will be. And imaging is another important thing. The most important thing is before you go for imaging and before the vitreous hemorrhage covers the eye, dilate and look for the foreign body if it is present, because ophthalmoscopy is the best way of localizing a foreign body. And second thing, whether it's a closed globe injury or open globe injury, doesn't matter. Always do X-ray, PA view, not AP view. Again, I am underlying it's a PA view, because in AP view, you'll be having a lot of bony shadow. So ask for a PA view and a lateral view, and it is mandatory for all MLC cases. In spite of doing ultrasound localizing the foreign body, in the court of law, X-ray PA view is mandatory. And second thing is ultrasound B-scan can be done if the damage to the globe is not very extensive. The advantage is it gives you a wonderful collateral damage, whether there is a vitreous hemorrhage or retinal detachment or all those things. CT scan can be done to exactly localize the foreign body. MRI should never be done in case of metallic foreign body, because the movement can be as high as 10 millimeter inside the eye, causing a lot of collateral damage while doing the MRI. So first to rule out the metallic foreign body before doing MRI. The best thing is, to be detected with MRI will be the stick, the wooden, and the plastic foreign bodies. The next, why we have to do the imaging is ultrasound especially is to rule out foreign body and to rule out exact and localize the foreign body. The previous case which I was telling, like where there was a self-inflicted injury, this is the 3D construction on the right side, which shows close to 60 hypodermic needle, inserted into his globe.
1 minute remaining.
Yeah. So the seventh commandment is when the patient comes with there are three windows. The acute phase, the idea is to restore the integrity of the eyeball and avoid infection. And the second subacute phase, where we need to, they present with the sequelae, where it needs the expertise of ER surgeon, and more than 1 month will be the chronic phase, where the patients will come with the complications. So in the immediate management, just integrity of the eyeball to be maintained. To avoid the infection, we can go for antibiotic intravitreal. So no PL, underline again, is not a contraindication for surgery as far as the trauma is concerned. Many patients with no PL after surgery, they will regain vision. So NPL is not at all a contraindication. And this is a surgical treatment. When you have an injured eye, so is it possible to anatomically reconstruct? If it is possible, go ahead. If not possible, you can enucleate, and further counseling is needed. If you can construct, go for the wound exploration with closure. If the functional reconstruction is possible, yes, you go ahead, and then we can reconstruct for the vision. Does the wound require closure whenever it comes with open globe? If no, it may not need closure, because it may be self-sealed, which can be confirmed by the seals, and no further intervention is required, assuming no cataract and no foreign body or no endophthalmitis is there in that case. But in case if it requires, you look for the foreign body. If present, you can go for lensectomy or vitrectomy with foreign body removal, with or without tamponade. If there is no foreign body, just go for corneal tear repair with intravitreal antibiotic, which is very important. So the signs of endophthalmitis has to look for. If there is endophthalmitis, we have to go for immediate tap, and usually we go for Corvit with the silicone oil injection, because most of these will have bacillus or gram negative. If there is no endophthalmitis, or if you can anticipate a delay in the primary repair, you go for tap. If you are going to immediately repair, you don't need to go for immediate intravitreal antibiotic. So the basic managed plan is to go for wound exploration with primary repair, especially if there is the patient with the flat tire sign, take an orbitopinion. Many times they ask for enucleation, but a primary repair can help in saving the eyeball. Later on, we can go for vitreous surgery to reconstruct this. So I think I'll skip the video because we don't have the time. So now in the COVID era, there is unprecedented delay because of hospitalization. We wait for the COVID reports. And if there is any delay, this is one of the worst thing to happen. The patient comes with a Bacillus cereus infection, which is very difficult. As I was telling, OPL as a presenting visual acuity is not at all a contraindication in these patients with open globe injury. Still go ahead and do the reconstruction. As far as the role of antibiotic are concerned, there is no statistically significant difference in the post of endophthalmitis developing with or without, but still we go ahead with giving because they may be having other adnexal injuries. And same thing, the intravitreal antibiotic, but as this thing after the repair of open globe injury, it is very mandated. So it reduces the risk of people going in for endophthalmitis following open globe injury whenever there is a tear which is repaired. So any corneal tear or any scleral tear, when it is repaired, it's better to go for intravitreal antibiotic empirically with Vanco and Septa. So in case of any prolapsed tissue, you just gently try to deposit back if it is a fresh one, but ideally you don't deposit, upsize away, and the vitreous has to be addressed properly. Iris should be upsized if it is necrotic. And the most important thing is when you are doing a scleral tear repair, see to that you are not incarcerating the retina, because many a times when you are going inside after the primary wound, most of the time the retina is incarcerated in the scleral wound. The immediate indication for cataract surgery is the presence of anterior capsular rupture, or if the media is very poor for us to approach posterior surgery, then you have to go for immediate cataract surgery. Otherwise, we can wait. And the role of prophylactic buckle in the management is controversial. Nowadays, nobody follows it. And the indications of vitrectomy during the OGI repair is the presence of retinal detachment, presence of foreign body, and the presence of endophthalmitis. Any of these things are there along with the OGI repair. If the tear is not bigger, immediately we can go for the vitreous surgery. And lastly, we can have suprachoroidal hemorrhage. Again, this is a very rare complication, but the drainage timing should be at least 7 to 14 days later. You wait for the blood to lyse, and it can be drained very easily with the help of a 25 non-valve cannula. Put it in, by inserting that in the pars plana area. So again, I'll just avoid it. And the late complications are very difficult. Like when they come after the tear, they come with a very bad retinal detachment with no visibility. This is one such case where we can find nothing in the posterior segment when we are examining. But after cutting the membrane, we could see a rolled up, like it's like a cauliflower, like this is a one-eyed child, cauliflower-like retina, which was reposited. And finally, the child had some 3/60 vision. So a management of anti-segment also should be done with care, so that somebody is going to operate later on in this size. Care should be taken while suturing also. And the last, and if not the least, is the sympathetic ophthalmia. We have got quite a few cases following trauma in other eye, which has to be told to the patient, and we have to tell them how to recognize that from their point of view. Early recognition and a long-term treatment helps in a proper management of sympathetic ophthalmia. And the most important, the last slide of the presentation, is the counseling. Usually we counsel them in group, because once if you counsel them individually, the uncle will come, the aunt will come. So you make the entire team to sit with, discuss with them what is the plan of action. And sometimes we have to be very brutal in counseling them, because they may not understand the outcome. So we have to be brutal in telling the outcome. We have to be very truthful in telling the outcome, and we have to explain the need for multiple surgery, and the prognosis has to be told. And finally, we have to tell about the chances of the eye going in for phthisis, because sometimes they think that the money and the surgery in a bigger center, they think that will bring the vision normally, which is never possible, which has to be told to them in advance before taking them surgery. So with that, I think I'll conclude this presentation, and I would like to thank my colleagues, Dr. Piyush and Prithvi, in helping me in doing this approach to a case of open globe injury. Thank you, madam, once again. Thank you.
Very nice talk, Dr. Naresh. I'll ask one very simple basic question before Srinivas takes on. So what would be your timing of doing a vitrectomy when there is endophthalmitis and penetrating trauma, or intraocular foreign body, I mean?
Immediate, madam. Immediate, actually. If the patient comes, most of our cases we do immediately, actually. So as soon as the patient comes, if the patient comes at 6 p.m. also, most of the time we operate the same day.
With end of
Yeah, if the corneal clarity is there, we never wait, because within 12 hours or 14 hours, depending upon the organism, especially gram-negative or bacillus, especially gram-negative, the next day the cornea melts, will not have any visibility, the eye goes for phthisis. So we never waste any time in taking up these cases. So we go on an emergency basis, all these cases of open globe injury.
Thank you.
Naresh sir, wonderful presentation. I think your 10 commandments really gave a lot of insights on the intraocular foreign body. One simple question is, when do you call it as a staged approach, and when do you want to do both together? Say, for example, there is a big corneal tear and you do the suturing at the same time. And unfortunately, we can't do B-scan in those cases. So would you like to enter at that point itself, or you would like to the primary wound repair to heal and then do the B-scan, because it might be associated with choroidal sometimes. It can become a surprise once we go inside. So when do you plan the stage surgery, and when do you plan the both together?
No, as you said, if there is an extensive corneal tear, because both the surgeries are not possible, and if the scleral tear is quite extensive, extending very posteriorly, in such cases we go for primary repair, wait for 14 days for the wound integrity to happen, then we go for the second this thing. Because in such cases, if, as you said, if there is suprachoroidal, actually locating the foreign body will be difficult, removing them will be also difficult. So in large tears, yes, we go for a staged approach.
And one good thing I learned is doing X-ray in all the MNC cases. I didn't know this.
No,
and
it is mandatory.
It's
it is
mandatory.
mandatory. Yes, yes.
It's
We have,
and
a lot of MNC cases.
these nimble rings have become obsolete, sir. We don't, of course, CT and MRI does give a lot of insight. But what about these nimble rings? Because earlier we used to give Waters view, Caldwell's view, apart from the lateral and the PA view, what you were telling. This totally has become obsolete now, the nimble rings usage in the X-ray.
No, but I will not say it's totally obsolete, because many a times, actually, I have cases, because of time, I couldn't show that. There was a foreign body in PA view. There was a nice, this thing, a ball bearing ball rest. On the lateral, it was not seen. But when we did the limbal ring, you won't believe that ball rest was in the frontal lobe of the patient's brain, actually. So we just left that this thing. So limbal ring, yes, it is wherever you don't have this facility of MRI or CT, it's very, I mean, especially CT, it is a very helpful and precise localization of foreign body.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.